Earlier today, Little Cup had the Girafarig suspect test. The voters have voted. Will the decision be to ban Girafarig or to let it be? And the answer is, oh my god, it's gone. Whew. I am so glad it's finally gone. Also, for a little quick bit of context, not a single person who voted said do not ban. Literally everybody's just like, no, this is broken. We gotta get this out of here. Not a single person who's voted so far has voted do not ban. It was that bad. For a little quick refresher on why exactly Girafarig was broken, well, it had a Nasty Plot moveset that it could reliably use, which would break through teams really easily because Nasty Plot boosts your special attack by 2. It has the signature move Twin Beam, so that means that you can't even use a Sash to stop it because it hits twice in one turn. You have Terra Blast, which is stab both before and after you Terrestrialize. And you can use Protect, so that way you can scout out what exactly your opponent's doing. You can also use it to blank priority moves. It was really annoying to deal with. And in addition, it just sort of has an immunity because it can. So if you ever throw off a grass type move, congratulations, you just came in for free with an attack boost. If you look at its stat line, it's got really good bulk, 70, 65, 65, as well as 85 speed, which gets it up to 19 at level 5, which also means that it's only outsped by 2 Pokemon. Hooray! Well, 2 relevant Pokemon. You're also outsped by Wiglet, but nobody cares. You also could run a physical attacker set for whatever reason. You have Psychic Fangs as a really nice stab move that destroys screens. You have Earthquake, so that way you have built-in coverage, so that way you can hit stuff like Pawniard, stuff like Tinkatink that you otherwise have a hard time hitting. You have Crunch for the Girafarig Mirror, because guess what? Girafarig was its own best check. Hooray! And then you can also hit the ghost types that want to come in on your Body Slam, which was also a really nice stab. Spammable move that very often could just paralyze and then your opponent's counterplay was ruined. Hooray! And then you would be thinking, oh, well, I can just wear it down passively because, you know, there's no recovery on these. Introducing Calm Mind Rest, because you also have the ability Early Bird, which means that your sleep counter drops by 2 instead of 1. And in purely logistical terms, what all that means is rest becomes 1 turn sleep as opposed to 2. And typically that's how rest is balanced. Okay, so I rest the first turn, I sleep the second turn, and then on the third turn I'm also sleeping, so there's like a good amount of counterplay to it. Nah, I have Early Bird, so it's all A-okay, so I could just rest on the first turn, sleep the second turn, and then wake up on the third turn, and congratulations, there's significantly less counterplay as a result. And then you could also just Calm Mind up, get an attack, a special defense boost, and then just not die. So there's that. And as a result, it was banned. And that also begs the question, well, who's going to be the new king of the viability rankings? We have Gastly here, of course, but that's just a placeholder. The entirety of the VR isn't updated. However, who are the biggest beneficiaries of Girafarig being banned? Now, before I get into that real quick, if you could like, share, and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. If I get monetized, that means that this becomes more of a full-time job as opposed to a side gig, and being able to do this for a full-time job would be pretty excellent. First up, we have Gothita, and I'm thinking it's going to be quick banned because, oh my god, it's broken, at least in testing. I'm not even joking about this. So, if you're wondering, oh, well, what made it so good? Because, I mean, you literally have a video saying that Gothita is bad. Why? Well, that was because it has competition with Girafarig as a Psychic type. Why would you ever want to run Gothita, even if it does have this really broken ability, which means that your opponent can't switch out, when you could just run Girafarig, which is infinitely better, has significantly higher base stats across the board, better bulk, and also a variety of sets. So why would you ever run Gothita? Well, the thing is, now that Girafarig is gone, well, you can run Gothita really comfortably and have this very terrible to deal with set where you have Calm Mind, Psychic, Terra Blast, and Rest. And what you do is that you just Calm Mind up a whole bunch of times so that way you can't die. And you're thinking, oh, well, that'd be kind of hard to set it up. Well, no, you can get it on some really passive Pokemon like Walls, such as Among Us over here. So you just Calm Mind up a whole bunch of times, and even if you get worn down, you just use Rest, and you don't die. So you restore your HP and status, you don't die because it's a weak special attacker, then you keep on Calm Minding up until you're at +6/+6, so all of your stats your special stats are quadrupled. Correct? Well, no, actually it's tripled. I'm off by a factor, whatever. But Once you do that, then you just sweep your opponent's team with Psychic. Wait, is it? +6 is quadruple times. I'm dumb. Whatever. Gothita's Hot Topic is making my brain melt. But then you could just sweep teams because you have Psychic, and then you're thinking, oh, well, you know, I could just kill it with a Dark type. Well, it has Terrablast fighting now. So, good luck with that. So I'm expecting this to get, if not quick banned, suspect tested really soon. You can also run a Choice Scarf set if you want to, so that way you can just be really fast and trap some things. And this is significantly more balanced because it doesn't just sweep teams. I'd still say that it's unbalanced because Shadow Tag as an ability is very unhealthy. But also with that being said, it's not terribly fast. It only gets up to, if you run a positive nature, 15. This one isn't, so you only get up to 14. Although its bulk's really good. 45 HP, 50 defense, 65 special defense. It can be really bulky. And you can still run Terrablast fighting, so that way you can trap and kill Pawniard, which is always nice. Then you have Trick if you want to be exceedingly annoying. And then you have Dark Pulse for some coverage moves. You also can run stuff like the grass coverage of Energy Ball if you want to, which is finally usable now because Girafarig is in the tier. So there you go. You also get Thunderbolt. So like you got a bit of coverage, but it's nowhere near as good as some other things. But with that being said, you can run this and you'd still be at least serviceable. So I think it's just going to be really unhealthy because it means that you can never kill anything with your walls, otherwise Gothita comes in and just kills you. So there's that. Next up, we got Spooky Scary Skeletons in Gastly. As I mentioned before, and as can be seen, Gastly is now up in S rank, and I don't think anybody's really disputing that. It's got some really fantastic traits. Its speed lets it get up to 18 at level 5, which is always really valuable. You have 100 special attack, and although you have disappointing HP, attack, defense, and special defense, you're already just really offensive on baseline, and that can never really go bad as long as you have the move pool to support it. But we have Spooky Scary over here. You have a multiple variety of sets. You have Eviolite. You can do Will-O-Wisp, Hex, and then you also have Sludge Bomb and Dark Pulse's coverage. If you want to, instead of Dark Pulse, you can run Dazzling Gleam, so that way you can hit Dark types a lot better. You also have Generation 1 Mon Syndrome, which, well, Gen 1 Mon Syndrome I call, just because your move pool's absurd. You have Energy Ball, Fire Punch, if you want to run that, Giga Drain, Ice Punch, Poison... Why does it get Poison Jab? Alright, whatever. But you also have Sucker Punch, Thunder Punch, Thunderbolt, Toxic, Trick, where we might see the return of Trick Black Sludge. It's such a funny set, I want to see it. But you have a lot of flexibility even with the Eviolite set, and you may be thinking, oh well, 30-30 is not really good. It isn't, but it's enough. It'll allow you to come in a few times, and you're also a pretty nice spin blocker, so you're good support for teammates that normally don't really mind hazards being up. For example, Glimmet. I'll get into Glimmet in a sec, but having just a really good spin blocker that can also put on a lot of offensive pressure is always a bonus. You don't even have to run Eviolite, you can run the Life Orb set, because if we look at your HP stat on Gastly, it gets to 19, and because of the interaction with Life Orb, when you lose 1/10, it rounds down, so it only does 1 damage per attack. So as a result, you have 19 attacks that you can use, which is really nice. Then you can still run stuff like Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, Terra Blast for fighting coverage, substitute to ease prediction, so that way, if your opponent wants to switch around Gastly and deal with it that way, well, you can just substitute and it's all A-okay. You have stuff like Clear Smog. If you want to, you can also run Nasty Plot, so that way you can become a really ferocious sweeper. And then finally, you can also run a Choice Scarf set, because you're going to be really fast, especially at 18 speed. Getting up to 27 is really good, because then you outspeed all other Scarfers. It's really hard to outspeed how fast it's going. Now, that still is a liability because you get hit by priority, but also, like, that's stupid fast. And you're going to be outspeeding a lot of stuff and hitting it really hard because of how good your special attack is. And then you still have all your coverage options that you want to use. It's going to be really good, possibly ban-worthy, but we'll have to see. Next up, we have John Cena. Brawler, it was really good in previous meta, A- tier, and I think it's still going to be good, and possibly even better. Possibly, we'll have to see. But the main reason why is that it's got really good stats, 82 attacks, really fantastic, good defense, good special defense. and a good HP stat. Like, it's all really nice. And then to top it all off, you have a speed stat that allows you to get up to 17, meaning that you can outspeed things, which is really important when Poniard only hits 16. Really nice. In addition, you have a good ability in Iron Fist, and also for whatever reason, you have an absurd move pool, even though you're not even Generation 1. Whatever coverage moves you want to go with, sure, well, I mean, you want to run Drain Punch on baseline, but then you also have stuff like, oh yeah, well, I can run Earthquake if I'm worried about, you know, poison types, but then also I can run Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Gunk Shot if you're worried about fairies, Crab Hammer if you're worried about fire types, and then also if you're worried about Gastly and poisons, you can still run Zen Headbutt. You got a lot of options here. It's pretty crazy, and I'm thinking that Zen Headbutt might become the standard once we finally get more of Gastly. It's going to be pretty cool. Next up, we have Glimmet, and as I mentioned before, Twin Beam would go through Focus Sash users because it hits twice. Well, Glimmet likes using Focus Sash because then it can be a suicide lead, where all it does is it takes a hit, sets up Stealth Rock due to its new ability Toxic Debris because it takes a physical attack, then Toxic Spikes are set, so you can get 2 hazards set up on turn 1, and that's pretty nice. And then from there, you can mess around with this. You don't have to run Mudshot anymore. The reason why you liked to before was that A, it's really good for the mirror, and B, if Girafarig tries to set up on you, well, you slow it down, and then you can revenge kill it, as well as hit it with a Sludge Bomb on the following turn if you wanted to. But you can run Spikes in this slot if you wanted to. And you have a really powerful attacks all around. You can run Dazzling Gleam if you're worried about the fighting types, or the dark types for that matter. You don't have too much coverage, but you can also run Terra Blast and put on whatever type you want. Overall, I think it's going to be really good as a result, especially because you can auto-set Toxic Debris, well, Toxic Spikes via Toxic Debris, I should say. Plus, you've got a frankly absurd special attack stat for whatever reason. They just gave it 105? It's even more than Gastly, it's absurd. So even though it's a support Pokemon, it can hit you stupid hard. And I'm expecting the Focus Sash variant to go up in usage, which is going to be really nice for enabling hyper offense teams, meaning that we're going to have a lot more team diversity, I would say. Hyper offense, it may or may not work, but it's all about denying rapid spin. Actually, we may have to see, because another variant of hyper offense is Sticky Web, and we'll have to see if it's actually going to be any good in the calling meta, because the 2 big threats are going to be Gastly, which has Levitate, so it's immune to Sticky Web. But then also Poniard, which has the ability Defiant, which means that whenever your stat gets lowered, you get a sharp increase. So Sticky Web lowers your stats, and that's how it's so good. And I'll have to have a dedicated video on that soon enough. But like just thinking about like the hazard metagame, how is that going to shape up, especially when the new best mon that's here is going to be a ghost type? We'll have to see. I mentioned it before, but we have Fungus Among Us over here, and it's going to be significantly better because we no longer have Sap Sipper Girafarig. As I mentioned before, Sap Sipper just gives it a free immunity to grass for whatever reason, so it just has that, and it was really annoying to deal with. So Fungus Among Us can now be more more easily used as a result of being able to use Spore a lot more often, and not just chancing, oh, well, darn, here comes the biggest, baddest mon in the tier. I'm dead. And I just gave it an attack boost. So now you can just Spore really easily, and you're also going to be back to your roots of being a really good defensive Pokemon. 69 HP, 45 defense, 55 special defense. It's really nice. Plus, you also have Giga Drain, Synthesis, you have Sludge Bomb. You can also run some other stuff in here if you want to. You got some options. Clear Smog's probably going to be the big one, so that way you can counter Hot Topic over here, but it's really unoptimal against a lot of other things. But you also have Regenerator, keep yourself healthy. You got a lot of positive traits. It's really nice. So we'll have to see how well it shapes up, but I think it's going to have a significant improvement as a result of Girafarig being gone. I think Stunky even gets better. So for context, Stunky had a little niche in last metagame, huh? Last metagame, as a result of being a Poison Dark type, so it could take on all forms of Girafarig, and then it started running Terra Ground and then lost the niche. But what made it really nice is that it had a lot of really nice neutral matchups, because like, oh, well, it comes in on Gastly really reliably because it's Ghost Poison, resists both of its stabs. You can threaten with a Crunch or a Sucker Punch as a result. You also threaten Hot Topic, and even though it's a fighting type, Crabrawler doesn't want to come in because it has Play Rough as coverage. And you would figure, well, what about Poniard? Well, it's also got Fire Blast. I'm thinking this might be a really good mod. We'll have to see. Like, Fire Blast may be a bit too weak coming off of this kind of mediocre special attack, especially with no investment. We'll see. But I think just its standard traits of Crunch, Sucker Punch, Play Rough, Fire Blast is already really good coverage against the entirety of the tier. And you even have good team support because you absorb Toxic Spikes because you're a Poison type. So even stuff like Limit doesn't really like seeing you. And Fungus Among Us doesn't like taking really hard crunches or Fire Blast for that matter. So I'm expecting this to be really good, possibly B+ tier. We'll have to see. So who are the big losers when it comes to the metagame shift? Like, quote-unquote nimble, because you still have a good matchup versus Gothita, but a lot of, like, you're going to have some issues dealing with Fungus Among Us when it can spore you. Going to have quite a hard time dealing with Brawler when it can just, like, bulk up in your face and a lot of your moves aren't going to do anything. And then Gastly was already a really good check to you anyway. And it can also just substitute, and then you have to deal with the fact that Sucker Punch isn't hitting, that sort of stuff. It's going to be rough. Next up, we have Larvesta, and it'll also be combined with these two, as well as a special mention of why Drifloon's also good. But Larvesta really thrived because it had a good matchup versus Girafarig, I should say. And it was really easy to, if it was a physical set, just come in, U-turn, possibly burn the Girafarig, and then leave. So U-turn was such a really good power of that kit, and also you still have the utility of Flame Body burning physical attackers. The issue now is that it's a very specially offensive-based metagame, except for Brawler. But if we look at the big winners again, we have Special Attacker here, it's meant to be with the stat line. Special Attacker here for sure. This is the only physical attacker that's getting a buff, and even then it was still already good. And then we have another Special Attacker here, Special Attacker here because Giga Drain, Clear Smog. And then we also have a physical attacker, but you can kind of deal with it, kind of, but you don't really like taking the hits anyway. And if it hits you with a Fire Blast and then you're in crunch range, then you're in trouble. But you have a lot less of passive matchup that you had in the previous metagame. Like, you could still do stuff versus Poniard, Toadschool. Not really versus Mudbrain, Quaxley. Kind of against Deerling. I'm not expecting Deerling to do terribly great or fantastic. It'll be okay. But it's going to be hard for Larvesta to really truly shine in this metagame, especially because it still has the Stealth Rock weakness. And speaking of Stealth Rock, another big losers are the two Rapid Spinners that we have. The best Mon is now Ghost type, and as such stuffs Rapid Spin, and you love having that Ghost type in, so not being able to remove hazards is going to be really bad for the Rapid Spinners. Toadschool also doesn't like the fact that it now has to share a spot with Fungus, because before what you could do is that you could use Spore, and that would be a really nice utility move, and with Mycelium Mite, you would even go through Sap Sipper on Girafarig. But now Mycelium Mite's basically just a hindrance because you're always going last with Spore. And why not, if you want to have a Spore bot, well then why not just use Fungus, and it'll also absorb T-Spikes for you. And although Knockoff and Rapid Spin are really good utility moves, and you're able to threaten Gastly whenever it comes in, it's going to be a hard time to really justify using Toadschool. Well, in some scenarios, it's still going to be good because of its stat line. It's good speed, good special attack, good special defense, alright attack, really good move pool because it's got Earth Power, all this sorts of stuff. But it's going to be a lot less of a Spore bot and more of a general utility mon. So I think its role will shift and it's going to drop. But it's going to be like, ah, darn, I'm currently in A+ tier. Oh no, I've dropped to A, A-. Oh heavens, I'm doing so terribly. You know, that kind of sort of thing. Also, Quaxley, it's going to have a really rough time when, if we go back to these threats again, the only good matchup that Quaxley really has is against Glimmet, and even then it's going to be running the Focus Sash set, and you're going to take a lot of damage from Sludge Bombs and a whole bunch of other stuff. Fungus Among Us just really sits on you. If you're not using Brave Bird, instead of wanting to use Encore because of how good Encore is as a utility move, then you can't really break over this. This is a neutral matchup, but you don't really want to take a whole bunch of damage from it. But this can run Thunder Punch, this can run Thunderbolt, so can Gothita. It's not going to be a good time. So Quax is going to have a really hard time in this new metagame, even if it does still have a lot of positive traits. And also, if you want to use a hazard remover, Why not use Drifloon? Like, this is pretty alright. You have Defog, so that way you can remove hazards. You have Acrobatics, so even after you have the Oranberry remove, and you have the Unburden boost, you can still be really threatening. You have Will-O-Wisp to burn opposing Pokemon, and then you have Terrablast Fighting, so you don't have to deal with Pawniard. So why ever use, like, Quaxley? It's going to be really hard to justify, and it's going to be pretty sad. And also, Drifloon can spin block for itself if it wants to, so you still have team utility even if you're not trying to defog away hazards. And you have Will-O-Wisp support. So, I mean, like, Toad is still going to be good because it's got some ridiculous base stats, but I don't think Quax is going to be cutting it too well in this metagame. I mean, it could also be like, oh yeah, we just quick ban Gothita and we decide that Gastly's too much already. Then like, okay, well then Quax is going to get better again, but currently, it's not looking good for the Darkwing Duck. And then finally, who's gonna like be all right and not really like not big loss, not big gain. This is sort of okay. Old Pawniard, all reliable over here. It's kind of funny, but it just sort of doesn't. Like, it doesn't really move all that much. It's just like, oh darn, maybe A+ to A. But it's still gonna be really good because, like, going back to this, you have a good matchup versus Gothita, and it needs to run Terra-type fighting to break over you. If your opponent uses Terra on something else, borderline invincible, it's gonna be really hard to break over. This has to use Terra Blast fighting for Pawniard. I mean, this just deals with it. Pawniard threatens this with Iron Head. Among Us is kind of a neutral matchup. It's not bad, but you can do better. And like this can't switch in. Little Stunky can't really switch in, can it? I mean, it still likes using Fire Blast, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't expect Stunky to switch into Pawniard moves anytime soon. It's just not bulky enough. But with all that being said, you also still have Stealth Rock support. You can make a Swords Dance set. That's going to be really nice. You got a whole bunch of really good traits. You're still good against webs. Still got really good bulk. It's really hard to have Pawniard ever be like, ah, darn. Darn there, Pawniard, you're bad. Even in the fighting game metagame. The fighting metagame of Sword and Shield. No, it's A tier. It's A+ tier, even though you literally have Timber and Mean Food running around that just kill it in one hit. It's fine. It's so hard for this Mon to be bad. It's funny. Next up, we have Zorua. I'm thinking that because it has access to extra sensory, so that way it can hit multiple Mons without using Terastallization, in addition to still having Terra Blast fighting, or whatever flavor of Terastallization you want to run on it. You still have Knockoff and U-Turn. It's still going to be good. I don't expect it to drop, if I'm being honest. It's just got way too many valuable traits. Having Stab Knockoff to remove items is so fantastic, especially when coming off of this 65 base attack. It's going to be fantastic. As an attacking type, not like fantastic as in like general utility. You can also run a more pivot set, and then you can kind of run Terra type Dark to boost your Sucker Punches and knockoffs if you want to. You don't have to. It's an idea. Overall, I think it's still good because you have knockoff and you have positive matchups versus stuff like Gothita versus Gastly, and you have options. You can also run Terra Fairy on this more bulkier set, so that way you can deal with Crabrawler better. Like, you have options in order to be able to still be relevant in this metagame. I don't think it's going to drop too much. And then Diglett. It's Diglett. Like, I know that I said before, like, oh, look, we got Gothita over here. It's stupid busted because Shadow Tag means that foes can't switch. And also, if we look at Diglett, Diglett has an ability that means that foes can't switch. Well, the two conditionals that make Diglett worse is that A, its bulk is abysmal, 10 HP, 25 defense, and 45 special defense. And also, it's got actually good attack and speed, as well as a good typing that allows it to come in on electric type moves. You got Substitute to Ease Prediction. You still have an Eviolite set as well. I don't think this is going to be broken because you can at least get out of Arena Trap with some Mons. Not to mention, you don't always have the best matchup, especially versus stuff like, if we look here, we have Crabrawler, we have Fungus Among Us. If you're running the Life Orb set, then Stunky just KOs you immediately with Sucker Punch. You might even get to, if you do Terra Dark, you might be able to break it over on baseline. So, like, you still have some bad matchups, but it's going to be really good still. And then finally, Mankey. It seems like, well, a Psychic type just got banned, so why would Mankey be bad? Well, the only reason is just because U-Turn gets worse. One of the things that Mankey really like doing is he's like, oh, well, I come in, and then I click U-Turn, and then I get a whole bunch of advantage out of it because I bonk Girafarig really hard because it's a Psychic type. and that was always really nice. And then you still have good close combat as really nice stab. You get up to 17 speed as a Scarfer, which is stupid nice. But you also have a whole bunch of flavors of coverage move. Before, you could run Earthquake really reliably, but I'm thinking you're going to have to run Night Slash, and then you can run Earthquake here if you want to, but then also you have to worry about Fungus. Like, you can figure something out to make Mankey work. I'm not expecting it to drop too much. Like, Fire Punch, if you want to run that, that actually might be a pretty good idea, huh? Maybe. Ice Punch, Poison Jab, Outrage, Rock Slide if you're worried about Larvesta, Seed Bomb if you're worried about water types, Shadow Claw if you really want to hit... Wait, if you really want to hit Gastly hard and have some better neutral matchups. Because Dark coverage and Ghost coverage are really similar because they both hit Ghost and Psychic types. It's just that Dark types have some resist, whereas Ghost only has the normal immunity. So you can play around. Oh, I want to run Night Slash, I want to run Shadow Claw. Go with whatever you feel is best. Stone Edge, and then you also have Thunder Punch. You get a bunch here. And then also, if you're just really desperate, go for Terra Blast. Mankey has enough stats. Like, it has enough speed, it has serviceable enough bulk, and it has a really good attack stat to be able to do basically whatever it wants. So overall, I think the metagame is going to become a lot more stable with the conditional of we're going to have to see how Gothita and Gastly come out. But otherwise, I'm really happy with this change, and I'm glad that Girafarig is finally banned so we can go to a more stable and less stupid metagame. Thank you all very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you could like, share, and subscribe, that'd be wonderful. And as always, have a good day.